Chris and Chris Talk Movies.
Hello. Whoa. Yeah. No, I don't know what I'm doing. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Chris Ferry, and of course, this is my co-host.
My name is Chris Huddleston.
And today we are both very excited to be talking to you about when was it?
88, I think.
The 1988 horror film Pumpkinhead. Pumpkinhead, do you have a synopsis for us, Mr. Huddleston?
I do. So, Pumpkinhead was an 88 film, as we said. It was directed by Stan Winston, who Stan Winston was more of known as an effects guy. He worked on Jurassic Park, and I think he designed The Predator and worked on Terminator and, all kinds of stuff. So it was directed by him, and the synopsis is: after his son dies in a hit-and-run accident, Ed Harley, Lance Henriksen, seeks revenge against the teenagers responsible. With the help of a local witch, Ed summons the vengeful demon Pumpkinhead to hunt and kill the group of friends. But when Ed discovers a bond between himself and the creature, he begins to have second thoughts about employing the vicious monster, and he fights to end Pumpkinhead's murderous rampage before it is too late. That might give away too much. I don't know.
Sorry.
But so you had this was a first timer for you, correct?
Correct. I had not seen Pumpkinhead. I liked Pumpkinhead. I liked it. I enjoyed it a lot. It was short and sweet. Well, sweet. It was concise. There wasn't a lot of fat, if any, in this movie. It just got right to it. There's a lot of positive things I have to say about it. I like the performances in it. It was great to see Lance Henriksen have a lead role. I've a lot of movies I've seen him in, he's peripheral. I thought the way they established the relationship with him and his son was fantastic in the beginning. Super sweet kid, super sweet, son dad bond there, and it really set up. So of course, spoiler alert, we spoil these movies, but when he loses his son, it's very painful because right away they've established that there's this wonderful bond between these two. And I just thought that was super duper effective. A lot of horror movies, a lot of movies in general, don't seem to take the time, or because this doesn't spend a lot of time on it, don't seem to establish that as effectively. They just take it as given. Or like, oh, this is his son. They love each other. He lost his son. Now he's furious. But you don't feel it like you do in this movie, which I thought was great. The 80s, the teens that are the problem. It's kind of fun, the performance choices that they're making and the costume choice. There's a heavy, and he's the big bad guy, and he's kind of a caricature of the incorrigible bad dude or whatever, and they're riding these dirt bikes. I'm like, this is what you do for your kicks, is you come out here and hurt people riding your motorbikes.
And it was like I can just ride my motorbike wherever I want, and nobody could stop me, and all that. But it was mainly just that one guy. The rest of the group of kids were just kind of normal. They weren't real douchey or anything.
Yeah, no, they were actually pretty nice. And I think the other thing I liked about this is, so, if you had to fit it on a t-shirt, this is just a horror movie. Man loses son. Man has witch called down vengeance demon to get revenge. And you think, okay, so there's probably an animatronic monster. Check. There's probably some scary chases through. There's a cabin in the woods, right? There's some scary nighttime stuff. Check. So it ticks off all the boxes. It is very much the thing that it is. But I felt like it was actually, and this is the script and the direction, I felt like it ran deeper than that. It didn't paint the teens as a bunch of Well, first of all, it was genuinely an accident that killed the kid. Like, it wasn't like they were hot rodding in the beginning. They're kind of hot rodding their car around, and I thought, oh man, the kid's going to run out on the road and get killed because these guys were being reckless assholes.
They definitely kind of set that up like it's going to be a pet cemetery kind of a thing.
But they were just riding their motorbikes across the street and up in the hills. Like, I mean, it's obnoxious. Those things make obnoxious noise and they're loud, and the guys are jumping around, and it doesn't look safe. But it doesn't look like it's unsafe to the area. It just looks like they're these kind of daredevil people getting their kicks. I don't know if they're training for some sort of competition or what they're doing. I don't know why there's like 8 of them.
Yeah.
When there's just 2 people riding their bikes. And then the dog starts barking, and the guy has to run and do an errand. And he leaves his son watching the store, and the dog starts barking and runs across the street towards the loud bikes, and the kid goes after him. And they all try to stop him. They're like, wait, no, little boy, stop. I mean, they see that it's dangerous. They try and prevent it. And of course, we know by that point what's going to happen is these bikes come flying over the hills. They can't see them. They come jumping over a leap, and then the kid is they're already on the descent, and then the kid is standing right there. So it was 100% a tragic accident. In the aftermath of it, it's mishandled a little bit. Like, there's times when you're like, oh, if we could just pause time and like slow this down a little when the guy shows up. Then they all kind of run, which is bad, but that's led by the main guy.
The main guy took off because he had warrants or something, but the rest the phone didn't work.
He heard some other girl in a similar way. You're like, how many times do you have to run over someone on your bike?
But the rest of them were trying to find a phone.
And the rest of them have a conscience, and they're trying to do the right thing, and they're trying to bring him around. He even locks 2 of them, and he hits one of the guys with, like, he goes rogue. Even he comes around in the end, right? Mm-hmm. Things have already started to go bad, and I don't think he even knows it yet. But we, the viewers, know that this machine has already been set in motion, and it's way too late. But even the bad guy is kind of like, for once in my life, I'm going to do the right thing. And you think, wow, really? Oh, man, he's had a change of heart. He lets them out of the closet, right? And the thing is right outside at that point and kills them all. But I just think that that's unusual that instead of it just being about the monster mauling people, it's actually about this sort of tragic turn of events that wasn't clearly any single person's fault. And then this guy in his grief wants vengeance and sort of literally makes a deal with the devil. And even he realizes, oh God, what have I done? Right. So, I mean, the horror of this is less about the big monster than it didn't have to be this way, Mm-hmm. And I say that this is a movie with a giant monster and a witch and a cabin in the woods and a family of offensively cliche hillbillies.
Oh, that was, I loved.
I'm sorry, I got to get this last thing out. Who all have perfect teeth, right? They have terrible hair.
I noticed that.
They're filthy. They're literally wearing potato sacks. They're covered in dirt, and they've got all of them perfect, sparkling white teeth, like Hollywood teeth.
I never did figure out which one she was for sure, but I saw in the credits that Mayim Bialik from Blossom and The Big Bang Theory and all that, she was one of the little girls.
No kidding.
I didn't recognize her in the movie, but one thing that really made me laugh is and that's when Lance Henriksen leaves he goes to do an errand for it's like a feed store, and he's taking feed to those people. And it's the dad and a bunch of kids, and they're really backwoods people. And the kids get out while the dad is talking to Lance Henriksen. And one of the girls of the motorbike people has a camera. And the girl's like, what's that? And his brother's like, that's a camera. And I thought, is there anywhere in 1988, was there anywhere in the United States that there would be a person that wouldn't know what a camera was. They live so deep in the woods that they've never seen a camera. You know, it wasn't like they were in the rainforest or something.
Right. Right.
I mean, that was just outrageous.
Yeah, it was it was it was definitely it did not offend me being a West Virginian. I was not offended by it, but I did think this is not necessary. I mean, we don't need to paint them like there's some tribe of quasi-human mongoloids. Yeah, they're people.
Yeah. So I agree with you on all of I felt like all of that stuff with the connection with Lance Henriksen and the son was played really well. The stuff with the kids, you know, all of the acting was pretty good. When he goes and finds the witch, and you know, she tells him to go into the cemetery and it's all foggy. Like, that was the atmosphere of that was so well done. And it kind of grows from like a fetus almost into this big creature. The design,
he has to go dig it up.
Yeah.
Right. She says, go to the cemetery. And he's like, how can I find it? And she's like, oh, you'll know it. And you would. It's this nightmare of a cemetery with this huge
lump. And that was all really cool. I loved all the design of that. I loved the way the monster looked. The only thing that I can really say as a real criticism of the movie is I think once Pumpkinhead starts killing the people, that's less interesting than the rest of the movie, because it almost seemed as if, I don't know if there were things that they cut or what, but just him killing those people, it wasn't very, he seems to do this. His signature move was to grab them by the top of the head and pull them up, you know,
and drop them.
And then drop them. But that's kind of where you want to see, okay, him kill these people in interesting ways. And it was just none of that. For all the creativity of everything else, that was all just pretty bland to me, I felt.
Do you know what it made me think of? It made me think of that Jaws thing. It's like the scariest parts when you don't see the shark.
Yeah.
It's like they built this animatronic Pumpkinhead. Sometimes it's a guy in a suit. Sometimes it's clearly a robot.
Mm-hmm.
They built it, and so they show the heck out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Lots and lots of shots. Or Alien, you know, in the first one, you don't really see the xenomorph.
Yeah.
There's a reveal at the end, but the camera doesn't linger on it. It's mostly the shape in the dark. And it's a little unfair considering how effects have evolved, but even in 88, you know, it looks not real. Those animatronic things didn't ever, I mean, you go with it, they're kind of puppet, but I never really, one of those monsters itself never really struck fear in me. I mean, even the xenomorph, which I thought was great, you know, seeing the thing itself is supposed to strike horror in you. And instead, there's a part of my brain that's like, oh, cool. It's got a mouth within a mouth, or what, you know what I mean? Like, I'm looking at the thing they built and how the thing they built, how it moves. And, oh, is that stop motion, or is that, you know what I mean? And maybe that's just me as an audience member, like, because of my interest in this stuff. But I think this would have benefited if that segment of the movie was somehow more, if there was more of a storyline to the cat and mouse of it, than, because there's really, like, there is 8 of them, and basically he grabs them by the head. There's a neat thing where there's a upsetting moment when they're in the cabin and he's got one of the young women outside, and he's got her by the head and he smushes her face against the glass of the window.
That was well done. Yeah.
And she's still alive and she's sort of screaming while he's smearing her face around the window. And then he shoves her head through the glass, which I guess that kills her or breaks her neck or something.
Yeah.
But that was original to me. I thought, I've never seen that before. And that's, you know, and that's really, because you can have the actress doing that herself and just have have a prosthetic thing. You don't see the monster, you just see its big claw-like hand. I
Mhm.
thought that's not only really smart, but that is really effective.
Mhm.
And I would have loved a lot more of that. At one point, he kind of grabs somebody. There's it's like 4 couples. And at one point, he grabs one of them, and the others sort of stop and turn around, realizing that one of them has been grabbed. And then suddenly it's up in the tree, like 30 feet up in the tree. You're like, whoa,
Yeah.
get up. And it's not a huge tree. It's like up at the top of this tree. And it's again holding the victim by the head and just drops her.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of like dropping the victim.
Yeah.
And I mean, once you're kind of like, okay, but if that's the MO, you're like, why does he just drop him?
Yeah. I'm sure him being a special effects guy who transitioned into directing, that he, wanted to show what he could do in terms of the monster. And again, it's a cool design. It looks good.
Sure.
They show it a lot, but you would think that he would have been, okay, we're going to do, the monster's going to, I think of like, again, this was a CG thing, but like in the new Suicide Squad where the shark guy takes somebody and just rips them in half,
Yeah.
I think there would have been like, we're going to do all kinds of crazy stuff like that.
Effect stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, all kinds of effect stuff. But what's interesting is, as a special effects guy transitioning to directing, he did such a good job with all of the non-effect stuff.
Yeah.
All of the for a horror movie, there's some pretty good drama in it and acting, so it's interesting that to me was more effective than the actual where you would think he would have shined.
I agree with you completely. I wish more horror movies it's not the monster, right? I mean, the monster is scary because of what you're afraid it's going to take away from you. And you go, well, your life. And you go, right, but what is your life? I mean, your life is the time, your relationships, the things that you're still planning to do, right? Nobody wants to die. A monster coming in the window is scary because you're afraid it's going to kill you. It can look scary, but what is scary about, I mean, a kitten coming in the window is not scary. A kitten coming in the window is adorable because you don't think it's going to end your life. So the monster itself is scary, but time and time again, they're like, this is scary because of this thing is scary in these specific ways. No, it's scary because it's gonna take away everything you have, and everything that you're still planning that you've been putting off but want to do because you think you've got all the time in the world. And that's about human relationships. And the kid, his love of his son is so sweet and wholesome, and it's taken away not cruelly in an evil way, but just by stupid, banal, bad luck. It's just a tragic accident. And it's not even an accident because these, reckless, jerks. I mean, they're jerks, but they're doing what they're doing. It's that the kid runs up into the middle of it, chasing his dog, and they try to stop him. And you just think, oh man, none of this had to happen. And right from the get-go, right before you leave Act 1, you're already, as an audience member, feeling a sense of genuine heartbreak. You're like, oh, this is terrible, right? Which is, it's great for a horror movie because, then we're going to go and meet the witch, and we're going to, and it's like, it's setting the stage of, wow, who would go invoke something horrible like this? Well, if you were that guy and had that relationship with your son, you might, so you're already on board in a real way.
And initially, I think it was a Pet Cemetery kind of thing, because I think he thought he could go to the witch and she could bring his son back. But instead it was like, nah, that's not the deal that you get. You can get vengeance, but you can't have your son's life back.
But I love it that this thing doesn't waste any time. We don't waste any time him asking people about that or describing what he wants. That's all just shown and not told. It's the way he carries his son's body around. He lovingly wraps his son's body up in a blanket, and he's carrying around like he's ready to lay it in a hospital bed and be like, save him, you know? He doesn't say, I want her to bring, where's the woman? He goes and asks the folks that came to the feed store, like, where's she at? But it's not because I wanted to bring him back. But the guy even says, she can't do nothing for him. She can't help him. Just go on home, forget about it. Mm-hmm. And then the guy's son sneaks out and tells him how to find the woman. And but she says that right off the bat too. She's like, nothing I can do for him. So he's like, okay, then what can you do? I love that. I feel like movies, like this is an hour and a half movie. And there's a lot of movies that run 2.5 hours long. And you're like, this is an hour and a half movie. Why is this 2.5 hours long?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
And I rewatched The Avengers, a month or two ago. And I thought, this doesn't need to be this long. Mm-hmm. They've got this big fight at the end with a bunch of CGI monsters. I'm like, this is boring. Like, who wins? They win, right? So then what happens?
Yeah. It's efficient storytelling in this film. It's not really like they really needed to add anything other than just more creative kills, I think. And I think the little added thing of where the witch, more or less tells him, you're not going to be happy about this, that he has this psychic link with the monster, so that everything the monster is doing, he's seeing it happen. So he's tortured by that. So it's like he gets to have his revenge, which feels good, maybe briefly, but then he's tortured by, I'm experiencing all of these people being killed, and he's a decent person, so he doesn't want to continue seeing that happen. And then ultimately in the end, he becomes the Pumpkinhead. So
it isn't that the Pumpkinhead is this one thing. The Pumpkinhead that he digs up was the last person that invoked the pumpkin, because he realizes that psychic link and he shoots himself, right? And then one of the women needs to finish the job for him, but he decides, the only way to stop this is for me to stop it myself by killing myself. I can't kill it. He tries shooting it, does burning it, nothing happens. When they both die, it bursts into flames.
Yeah.
And then it shows the old woman burying this sort of shriveled, it's a sort of a fetus-like thing that looks like a pumpkin head, but it's wearing the necklace that his son made him. So you realize, okay. So then she buries his body, and the next person goes and digs it up. It's him, and it's just the vassal passes on.
Yeah, I liked that.
I really liked it too. It was simple. I you know what? We're thinking about the kill things. I think there really were 4 couples. Weren't there 8 people? There were like 4 men and 4 women. They're young, they're in their 20s. And we see a little bit of differentiation. Oh, this one's sort of a journalist, maybe, or she's just a photographer. And we get to know them a very little bit in the middle, but then we get right into the thing of it where they're being hunted down. And one thing I would have liked is, like, if you're going to have 8 people, you have to do something to make them distinct, because I did lost track. 2 or 3 of them were blonde, and I'm like, which one is that? Doesn't matter. The movie was sort of like, don't think about it too hard. I'm like, well, you brought them. I'm like, you introduced 8 characters. I don't know, why 8? I think it would have been cool. The killings could have had something to do with their individual, like maybe one pair of them tries to get out and get to a phone, and one, I don't know, something, some kind of.
Yeah, they just, that was the area where they really lacked creativity. That just it was just bland and not very, I don't know, well drawn out, I guess.
But even part of the movie moved pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like wallowing around in it.
It was never slow. I mean, it takes a while for, I was really honestly, I saw this when it first came out on video, so I probably saw it in 88 or 89 or something like that, and remembered just the basic plot, but not much about it. But I was surprised that it spent as much time as it did developing the relationship with because there's a lot of horror movies like, did you ever see Mandy, the Nicolas Cage movie? So his wife basically these bad guys kill his wife. And in the beginning and it's kind of a slow burn, but you've got a couple of scenes in the beginning that set up, it's like, oh, she likes to draw and she likes to read. It's basically, and she tells some weird story to him from when she was a kid. And it's like, that's all the setup that you have of, it's like, so I'm supposed to be, just heartbroken that this woman gets killed. But they didn't, to me in that particular film, they didn't really set up much for you. It's just like, okay, I don't know. She likes to paint. She likes to read. And he's in love with her. That's all I really know. But I don't see much more reason to care, and then the rest of the movie is him going and hunting down these people.
It's a revenge movie. Yeah.
It's a revenge movie. Yeah. So I was surprised with this, how much time it set up his relationship with his child, and even some of the relationship with these kids, to where they weren't just completely two-dimensional. They had a little bit more dimension to them.
Yeah.
Did you watch this on, I think I watched this on Prime. Is that where you saw it?
Yeah.
I definitely feel like this is a movie that, is a small film, but I think there were 3 sequels, which I've not seen any of the sequels, but this is one that definitely could use a remaster, I think, because it just, a lot of it's real dark, and seems like it could really be cleaned up. I don't know what studio owns the rights to it, but there's been a lot of stuff with these kind of classic 80s horror films, that some smaller, like Shout Factory is one that does some, where they buy up the rights to a lot of these films, and they do these really excellent 4K transfers on them, and put a lot of special features on them and all that, whereas this one seems like it could use that.
Oh, sorry.
If it looked washed out.
I think if I was going to remake this movie today, I would skip the whole creature animatronic. I would skip it being a big otherworldly monster.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just make it, it would be closer to a zombie, I think, in my mind. And it wouldn't be just purely that. It would have some demonic flair to it. But the transformation thing, and so at the end when it's Lance Henriksen, right? It's like, oh, well, it's not the same. The body is just the vessel of this demon, and you go and you bury the next, and you could still make it scary, and you could do some fun makeup effects on, maybe
do kind of an Evil Dead kind of a thing.
Yeah, I don't know, something. But I mean, this thing was 10 feet tall and white like a maggot, and had a kind of it looked very much like a xenomorph, actually. I mean, it didn't have a long sort of, penile head. It had sort of more of a pumpkin head, but it had a tail, and it had the sort of big protruding shoulder spikes that didn't seem to serve any purpose, and it had big claws. And I mean, I think
he worked on Aliens with, because he worked with what's his face, Cameron, a lot.
Sure.
So
I'm just saying, in a woulda, coulda, shoulda sort of way, I think you could remake this movie on, this didn't seem like a huge budget movie to me, but you could make this, you could almost make this, independently, and keep the story just as tight. And it would be about getting creative and finding, set decorators that could make the witch's hut look. I mean, you could totally remake this movie.
Oh yeah.
And flesh out,
and I'm sure they will at some point,
that killing sequence. But
yeah, like you said, I think when Pumpkinhead himself comes on, or itself comes on the scene, I think you're supposed to be like, wow, this is terrifying.
And maybe
You know.
audiences were in 88.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember, I was a teenager, but I remember it being in my memory, it was pretty scary. But now it's not.
Yeah, I mean, what they've done with effects now it's insane. It's when we were a kid watching Star Wars, that was all practical, and I was so delighted because that was sort of what was in my imagination when I read comic books and stuff, like spaceships and lasers,
Mm-hmm.
laser swords. Excuse me. Nowadays it's like, well, I mean, looking at Dune, the one that Denis Villeneuve did, the visual effects in that are bonkers, and they're on this scope of like, it's just insane,
And
those sandworms, those worms, bro.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, those worms, bro. Yeah.
That shot of the sandworm like looming over them and them just staring up into its maw and the sort of sounds it's making, you're just like, that's amazing. You can really make anything manifest on the screen if you do it right with CGI. It's
yeah, for sure. So do you recommend this one?
I do. Yeah. You're more of a horror enthusiast than I am. Horror. But I appreciate a lot of the elements. And of course, I have been part of making a couple of horror movies, which is enormously fun. And I think that was kind of my way in. I didn't really have any interest in horror movies before that. And then making them, I'm like, oh, well, actually, they're really fun to make. And then I sort of came around at it that way, and the storytelling of it and the premises of it, and it's adjacent to sci-fi. And I think this is a nice, clean concept. I think it's very tightly executed. I think Lance Henriksen is great. The kid is great. All the performances are great. It doesn't linger. There's no wasted time. And, you're left at the end of a horror movie. You get that kind of, there's a sort of a sickening twist. I'm like, oh, it was him now. He couldn't prevent the cycle from, this is all just a horrible tragedy.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't like weeping into my handkerchief, but
sure.
I appreciated this whole movie, despite all of the little criticisms we've been talking about. I watched it. I was like, oh, it was great. So I would enthusiastically recommend it.
Yeah. Yeah, I recommend it as well. It, I don't know that it quite held up to what my memory was of it, because I remembered it being really scary, and it's not. But I enjoy creature feature movies, and I've said this before on the podcast that despite what we were talking about, that this looks kind of a lot like the Xenomorph. I do still think that it's a cool design, and that's one of my criticism of more modern sci-fi and horror, that so many of the monsters look alike. And I like this, because with CG, they don't have to worry about having a guy in a suit. And I still think the guy in a suit monsters are cool and effective. Who doesn't love Lance Henriksen? I'm sure there's probably somebody listening to this and they're like, who I hate? Lance Henriksen. I can't stand that guy. but he's, I don't know, he's a fan favorite. And I looked up, and I'm always curious. This, I think, is an indication that you're getting old. I'm always curious as the age of actors in movies, because for whatever reason, they have a scene in the beginning where he's been outside working and he has his shirt off, and he's in really great shape.
Yeah.
And he was 48 when this came out. So
No
I thought
kidding.
it was going to be like, oh, he's always looked old, but he's 32 or something. But he was 48.
Wish I looked like that. He was
really
shredded.
Yeah, he's shredded. He
They
gives
give
a
him
good performance.
They give him a set of, did you notice, like a set of prosthetic front teeth? Did you notice that?
No.
You really only see it later in the movie where he's sort of making the faces.
Mm-hmm.
They're almost like rabbit front incisor teeth, like buck teeth.
I didn't pick up on it.
And I thought, A, was he wearing those the whole time? And I think he actually was. B, did they make him bigger and emphasize them more at the end when they had the eyes, the contacts in to make him look more like Pumpkinhead?
Yeah.
Or was this all like, well, he's a good looking guy and you wouldn't have a guy that's good looking out in the country, so we got to give him bad teeth or something? I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I didn't pick up on it. But it you've got the spooky cemetery and the fog and all that, and the kids out in the cabin in the woods and everything. So yeah, it's really effective and a fun movie. And I think I'm going to check out see what the sequels are like, because then he comes back in one of them, or I don't know.
Lance Henriksen does?
Yeah, I don't know how that works
No
exactly.
kidding.
But I don't know if he's the same guy or a different character or what. But yeah,
I'm going twin brother from the city.
Twin brother he's the city mouse. And the most recent one was sometime in the 2000s. So anyway, but yeah, I think it's a fun movie. I definitely recommend it.
I concur. So that being decided.
What's that?
Oh, go ahead. I was saying that being decided, ...
I was going to say, I know you've been busy watching submissions for the film festival, but have you watched anything else of note?
I have been watching the Boba Fett episodes, Book of Boba Fett, as they come out. I'm really enjoying that. I think maybe we should. The
first two.
Oh, you haven't seen the third one yet?
No, I haven't seen the third one yet.
I think we should.
Talk about them when it's all done.
Yeah, you'll like it. I don't know that it was. Yeah, you'll like it.
Okay.
They keep introducing new stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Like every episode, they bring this new thing, and you're like, excellent.
Nice.
But I don't think we should go too much into it here because some people may not have caught up on it. But you had said at one point that you almost enjoy it more than The Mandalorian, or maybe you do. I think I do too. I think that it took everything that it learned that was great about The Mandalorian, processed it, and then, and it's a little bit unfettered. I mean, Baby Yoda is great, and that whole plot line is great. But I think The Mandalorian spent a lot of time trying to sort of tether itself to the canon and fit itself into the canon, and that's all fine. This one feels like a little more of a bottle episode. It's like, meanwhile, on Tatooine,
Yeah. I like that.
And there are details that you and I can talk about offline that are little things that it's just like the things they throw in that feel canon just feel like they're more for the fun of it than for, needing to serve some bigger architectural purpose. I think they're like, well, we're going to do one season of this. We're going to make it fun as hell, and everyone's going to love it. And so far, I'm like,
a lot of stuff for old school fans.
And so far, I'm like, I do. I am loving it.
You son of a bitch. I'm in.
I'm in. Rick Sanchez, son of a bitch.
I watched the first episode of Peacemaker, which is the spinoff show that's on HBO Max, a spinoff of Suicide Squad, which was okay. I mean, the movie was all right, but kind of, so far what I've seen of this, a lot better than the movie. I think it's very it's not for all sensibilities, because I don't think if this were a movie, I don't think they could get an R rating. It's lots of profanity and sex and violence, and it's just crazy.
Wow.
And the thing that's amazing is, he did a good job in the movie as well, but John Cena is really funny.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's a talented comedic actor now,
yeah, he is,
really.
Yeah.
So I would recommend it. I mean, it's very juvenile, and but it's fun. I think you would like it.
Expect. Have you seen the new Spider-Man yet?
I have not. No,
I haven't either. And my friend was starting to tell me about it on the phone. I'm like, I haven't seen it yet. He's like, you haven't seen it yet? I'm like, I don't know.
I decided to wait to watch it at home.
Yeah, I just the numbers have been getting weird, and I don't have a big movie theater around here. And when I go to New York, I'm so busy down there, I don't have time to like sashay into a movie. I want to get on the train and get back home.
I'm
But
sure
I
I'll
feel
love it. I
like
mean, I'm
I'm
excited
sure
to see
he
it.
was like, it's great. He
Yeah.
was just sort of like, it goes so many interesting places and it really delivers. And I was like, wow, great. So I'm excited to see that. I like that franchise.
Yeah, they've done a really excellent job,
Yeah.
with it. I have never seen the Andrew Garfield ones. I think I saw the
Oh,
first
really?
one, but I never saw the second one. Um,
I'm trying to think of who the villain was in the second one.
the second one is that with Electro, and that's the Jamie Foxx
Yeah.
character. I think I don't know if they did two villains in
Yeah.
that or not, but I think it's
Not the
I don't know.
strongest of the movies. Not the
Yeah.
strongest of the movies.
And so then I watched two more new-ish movies that came out in 2021. I watched Pig, this movie with Nicolas Cage that's gotten a lot of acclaim, and I was pretty underwhelmed with it.
Mm.
It's not a bad film. It's made well. It's a first-time director. He does an excellent acting job in it. He never goes crazy Nick Cage. He's very subdued in it. But there wasn't a whole lot to it. It's very simple, and it's just he's this guy that was this former renowned chef in Portland, and they don't explain it entirely how he wound up the way that he is, but he now just lives in a shack in the woods he has a truffle pig, and he gets truffles, and he has a guy who comes every week and trades the truffles with this guy, and this guy brings him cooking supplies. He just cooks for himself. Um, and somebody takes the pig, and then he goes into the city to
Kill
try to
them
get the
all.
pig to kill
Oh.
them all, to try to get the pig back. And it I don't want to spoil it, but it's fine. But I've seen, this make a lot of people's top 10 lists for the movie or for the year. And I was pretty excited about it from the trailer, and I felt just okay. I watched another one called Censor, Censor, and it's a British movie. It's fictional, but it's like early to mid 80s in England. Do you know about the video nasties?
No.
So the video nasties they had this period when home video was becoming a big thing. And in England, they were worried about basically horror movies. We're going to turn kids into monsters and make them killers and all this kind of stuff. So they had a ratings board, and I forget exactly what the number, but there were a bunch of films that were banned. And some were really hardcore movies, and others now, if you would watch them now, they were really low budget and they just seem laughable today. But from my understanding, there was kind of a hysteria with this, and people really thought it was kind of like Tales from the Crypt comics in the 50s, when people thought they were making kids into juvenile delinquents. And there was the same kind of feeling with these films at the time. And I think video stores, if they had banned movies in their store, they could get prosecuted, and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, the story is about this young woman who works for the ratings board. And so it's basically kind of her just seeing all these gross movies, and the movies are fictional in the film, that they're so it's not like it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's these made up titles. But through flashbacks, we see that her sister had disappeared. She thinks, when they were young, they were in the woods together, and something happened. The little girl disappeared. And she's always had problems with that throughout her life, now as an adult. And she becomes obsessed that one of the actors in a series of horror movies that she has seen is actually her sister grown up. And that she was abducted and like forced to be an actor or whatever. And so she sort of goes on a quest to find this lady. And I won't say anything more, but it made a lot of lists as well. It's a very slow burn and kind of just a sad film. I mean, it's horror-ish, more kind of the what her life is surrounded with, that she's watching all these movies all the time. But it was a really interesting, just kind of a small, again, like a 90-minute, really well-made British film. That's kind of a psychological horror thing, I would say.
It's an interesting premise.
Yeah. I think I think you might enjoy it. It's an interesting film.
I
liked it a lot more than Pig.
Speaking of the film festival stuff, there's one movie I'm thinking of that is slow. And it's pretty clear to me that that's deliberate. It's a period piece about a loner who is sort of, living out in the woods. And you're sort of like, he's quasi insane, I mean, he's borderline. He's on a mission, but he's also kind of unhinged, and the loneliness is kind of all done. None of this is explicitly spelled out. But in terms of what actually happens over the course of the film, and it's a short, but it feels quite long. I understand pacing is you're setting a tone, and it's like Barry Lyndon, right? Barry Lyndon, he created cameras. He wanted to shoot it in period accurate lighting. So if it's an interior shot in this palace, it was all candlelight, and he had to invent cameras that shoot film fast enough to work by candlelight. And so technically you think that film is incredible, and he wanted the pace to evoke the pace of life at the time, right? But as a modern audience watching that film, it is mind-bendingly boring. And I can sort of hear him being like, that's part of the point. And you're like, right. You know what I mean? But it's a complicated ticket to ask someone to buy. Not that every movie has to be about throwing popcorn in your mouth, but when a movie is slow, I don't know.
It has to be interesting. I think it's interesting that you brought up Kubrick, because I wouldn't say that all of his movies are slow. The Shining is it's not like it's quickly paced in the same. And in 2001: A Space Odyssey, there's a lot
very slow. Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff of just ships floating around and everything. But it's one of my favorite movies of all time. There's in most of his films, even though it's slow, there's interesting things happening. So the worst thing really that a movie can be is boring. So there are a lot of probably my favorite all-time films that are slow burns, and done the right way, it's really effective.
Yeah. Anyway, that was just a little aside. What would you like to view for our next time?
I don't know. I don't know if there's too much that we've thrown around. When I watched Pig, I was actually going to watch Don't Look Up instead, the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, and I watched Pig instead of that. So that's something I'm sure. I mean, just even on my own,
I watched that. I watched Don't Look Up. I mean, if you want to talk about that, we can.
You think it's worth covering?
Sure.
Okay. Why don't we plan on that one for next week then?
Okay, that's easy for me because I've seen it. I might go back and rewatch it, but I might not. Unless
there's something that you did. I sent you.
It's a comedy, really. I mean, it's kind of a dark comedy, but it's not a horror movie. You understand that?
Oh, sure,
right?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I know it's a satire. And I sent you a list of. Did you happen to have a chance to look at that list that I sent you of sci-fi, like 2000 sci-fi?
I did. Yeah. Let me pull it up.
There were a few on there that I'd never seen before.
Excuse me.
That some might be kind of interesting.
The Faculty.
Have you seen The Faculty before?
No, I've seen Sunshine.
That's a fun one. The Faculty's fun.
I've seen War of the Worlds. I have not seen Altered.
Yeah, I'd never even heard of that before.
Seen Avatar, seen 28 Weeks Later, seen Matrix Reloaded. Have not seen Splinter.
I've not seen that one either.
Donnie Darko, of course, we've done. Primer, I've seen. Did we talk about Primer?
No, I love Primer. That'd be a fun one to do as well.
We could do Primer, but I would probably
That's like
have to rewatch
70
it.
minutes long, I think.
Yeah.
It's worth watching again.
That is a great DIY. And then Star Trek, of course, I've seen. Paprika, I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, it's an animated one. I've not seen it.
Dreamscape Movies. Paprika did it first and arguably better. Ooh, just wow. That's
Seems interesting.
Time Crimes we did. Moon, I think I've seen Moon. Yeah, I've seen Moon.
Moon's great.
District 9. Oh, have you seen District 9? Oh,
Yes.
You have to watch District 9, man.
Yeah.
It's Neil
like
Blomkamp, man, in District 9. Since South Africa. That is one of my favorite movies. I love District 9.
It's a good one.
The Fountain, which is, have you seen The Fountain?
I have. It's on the movie theater.
I think it's remarkable. I think it's, there's problems, but oh my God, The Mist. Minority Report is, I think, a great movie, Spielberg.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I can watch The Mist. I know the book and I know how this thing ends. I have a feeling that one that really hurts. Watching
The Mist is okay. It's
artificial intelligence. Seen that? Seen AI? I Am Legend.
I'm a big fan of that one.
Yeah, Wally. Splice.
I've not seen Splice either. So it seems like the main ones that we've each not seen are the same films. So Altered, Splice, Splinter, Paprika. I've not seen any of those.
Yeah. Serenity. Saw that. Children of Men.
Oh, I've never seen Serenity either.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I never watched Firefly.
There's a whole fan base that it's like, why was this thing never picked up?
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. I think I came to it late. Like I didn't catch it when it first aired. And I think when it first aired, it would have felt ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, you've got things like The Expanse and the Battlestar Galactica reboot and a bunch of stuff that is a ragtag crew of da-ba-da-da-ba-ba. And there's just the one season of it, I think. I don't think they ever made more than one season.
I don't think so, no.
But Firefly was fun, and I'd be like, I was just starting to get its hooks in me. Like if they'd have made a season 2, I'd have watched it. Yeah. So it's interesting. And I don't know the whole story of why they canceled. Oh, this is way late in the day. I want to do a correction. I read an article after we spoke about The Matrix that whole thing about the script being stolen has been debunked.
It was not true. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know if anybody listens to more than one of these in sequence, but I went on a whole thing of like, well, I heard a story. I mean, I did caveat that I didn't know it was true or not. Apparently it's not. It's not true. Or there's no evidence of it, or it was thrown. I like that or something.
Story though.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why it still has traction.
Yeah, it seems believable.
If you feel like 2 and 3 were a real letdown, then the explanation of they didn't write the first one, so they couldn't write the second makes a kind of an emotional gut level, satisfying sense. You're like, now whether or not they stole it or bad people, I don't know about but apparently it's all hoo-ha. So sorry, everyone.
Retraction. I'm sure you saw that, not surprisingly, there are no plans right now for a Matrix 5 based on the performance of Matrix 4.
Good.
Because it bombed pretty hard.
Yeah, there's no need.
So,
it was amazing. The first one was amazing.
You can't go home again, I guess, in that case.
Yeah, so I don't know. So we're gonna do Don't Look Up for next time. Don't Look Up is a Netflix movie. It's out. You can watch it. It's Leonardo. It's a bunch of people in it. Yeah. It is a satirical dark comedy.
That works for me.
Great. Easy on me. I got a bunch of film festival stuff I got to do. So that takes a little pressure off of me.
Yeah. So in summation, if you've not seen Pumpkinhead, I feel like it's a lesser known, it's not a movie from the 80s that people just talk about all the time.
Right.
Although it has its fans, but if you've not seen Pumpkinhead, it's worth watching.
And
if you have Amazon Prime, it's free on Prime.
It feels like an earlier movie to me. Like if you'd have told me this was from 1981 or 1982, I would have unhesitatingly believed you.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the first, right? This is not one of firsts. It's not like, oh, was this the first one where they had the killer cam? This just feels like a very familiar little movie, but it is what it is, and it does it very.
It's not trying to be anything else. Yeah, it's effective.
It does it very well, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great little movie. And you're going to check out 2 and 3. I'm probably not interested unless you say
probably
they're amazing.
Sometime. Those were not free.
What are
the
odds that they're going to be great?
That was the only thing that kind of stopped me is if they were free on Amazon, I probably would have watched one or both of them. But they're, it's like $3 or whatever. And it's like, I don't know if I want to pay for it. I couldn't find anywhere else free. So I thought I'll watch an episode of Boba Fett or whatever. So yes.
Let me know when you watch that third Boba Fett, because there's some fun stuff I want to get your take.
I will.
Okay,
and I definitely recommend Peacemaker. It's keep your kids away, but
yeah, I'll check it out because I think he is funny.
It's pretty. It's like I say, very juvenile, but clever in some ways, and just it's very much that Guardians of the Galaxy, Suicide Squad humor, but this is really ramped up in the kind of shocking ness aspect of it.
Interesting. And that's HBO Max.
HBO Max, yeah.
Interesting that
I don't think it could be released as an.
Because you wouldn't want your kids to be watching that. Like, parents not paying attention might put that on for kids, and then you're like, oh, this is not
But Suicide Squad was R too.
Yeah, that's true.
So
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, Chris and Chris Talk Movies at gmail.com. That's our handle. We are on YouTube. We are on podcast things.
All the podcasts, whatever you call it.
We are on the socials. Send us a ding or a poke face. I don't know. Not face. That. Don't poke our faces.
Don't poke our.
Yes, smash that like button. And subscribe. Oh, dear. And from my end, Chris has frozen. On that note, we will talk to you next week.